defendant in his statement said when he arrived, that was the first home that he could see. So Jonathan goes to his home and he knocks on the door. He pounds on the door. Miss McCartney, the owner of the home, who's inside, comes down, opens the door, sees Jonathan, slams the door. Now, during this time, Jonathan never makes any threats. He never brandishes any weapons. He never tries to force his way into the home. In fact, he never runs around the back and tries to kick in the door. He never tries to come through any windows. Where is he standing? Jonathan is standing in a well-illuminated area with a spotlight on and another light that's by the door. He's lit up. He's trying to break his own home. What is he wearing? Jonathan is wearing a very loud, light-colored teal shirt with pressed slacks and no shoes. What does he do? He goes in the front yard and yells, turn off the alarm, come back to Miss McCartney, drawing attention to himself that he's there to commit a crime. It's nonsense. It's nonsense. He has no phone, he has no getaway car, but he's there to commit a crime. That's what they want you to believe. That's foolish. And then they say, well, there's no gas station down Pool Road. There's no homes down there. Why is he going down that road? Well, if you recall, he goes down that road because his friend, Max Bundaberg, when he dropped him off, his friend said, take it easy on this road, but you're speeding because the police hang out down there. So Jonathan walks down that road. In the meantime, while he's walking down that road, the defendant arrives on the scene. Now remember, this is a priority 1. B&E. The defendant gets out of his vehicle, walks around the yard. He doesn't knock on the door to see if anybody's okay in the home. He doesn't even have a conversation with Miss McCartney. He doesn't check on the well-being of her infant son. Neither of the officers do that when they arrive. They all drive down Pool Road based on what the defendant says he hears and knows. Ladies and gentlemen, they encounter Jonathan coming back from the foyer. And I have played the video over, and in their opening, they said Jonathan was doing flips, slapping his thighs, he was yelling. You know, all of these things they're saying is to demonize this young man. And the reason why they want to demonize this young man, because see, it's easy to say a person deserved what they got when you can muddy them up. It's easy to write that person off when you can demonize them and say they were up to no good. But there's nothing further from the truth. It's a bunch of lies. Now I played that video over and over again for Officer Little and asked him to show me where John was spinning around, patting his thighs, and yelling. And there's any commands. And I'm going to play it again. Pharaoh spit around. You can see in the video where he's walking quite a distance towards the police officers. Sees him. Tell me where he's patting his thighs. Let me know when you hear the officers say anything to him. What's your name? Why are you in the neighborhood? Giving any commands prior to them trying to shoot him with a taser. You know why you don't hear that, ladies and gentlemen? You know why none of those things happen? And they had enough time. You saw him walking when the cars pull up. He started walking. They had plenty of time to ask any questions. You know why they don't ask any questions? You know why they get out of the car with the taser and the firearm? Because in their mind, John had already committed a crime. They weren't there to investigate. That's why they didn't speak to Miss McCarney. They weren't there to investigate. That's why they never spoke and gave commands to Jonathan. They were there to arrest. Tase, arrest, and ask questions later. Ladies and gentlemen, people lie, but the video doesn't lie. And I'm not going to belabor, talk about, spend much time on the rock. You see, Dr. Martin Luther King said, there's nothing more dangerous in the world than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity. And to tell the young man who has approached the police that he has to sit on a rock falls in line with that statement because of sheer ignorance and stupidity. Jonathan, on that morning, walked up to the police. He wasn't running. You didn't see him stumbling in the video. You didn't see him swerving. You didn't see him trying to hang on anything. He walked on. And then you have Officer Little, who has his taser out, who tries, puts the red dots on Jonathan, and tries to tase him. And you notice it's only when that occurs that Jonathan begins running. No command. They don't say anything to him. He's just going to tase him. Arrest him, tase him, handcuff him. We'll deal with what we have to deal with afterwards. Jonathan runs in the direction between Officer Little and the defendant's car. You know why? He just came from the pool. Yeah, he knows that there's no way out. Officer Neal's car is blocking the sidewalk, some of the grass, and some of the grass onto his left. And there's a ditch on the driver's side of Officer Neal's car. In fact, Officer Neal testified that when he tried getting out of the car, he almost fell. He had to hold onto the door. And the defendant's car is parked in the middle of the road with the door open. There's no room to run through there. So the only way he has is to run between the larger space back in a Little's car and the beginning of the defendant's car. And he's running that direction because he knows hit that sideline where the grass is, run straight. There's a road. He just came from that area. There's a road. You get out. And when he's running, the defendant's standing there. Now, here the defendant's statement says, it was as he looked past me. Exactly. He was looking past him. He wasn't even thinking about the defendant. Because Jonathan was running to avoid being shot. He wasn't even thinking about it. He didn't even see the defendant. And the defendant, at that point, is backing up. You also, Jonathan running, you also have the defense talking about defense of others. So let's talk about that. Jonathan has already passed Officer Little. Officer Neal is in his car. Hasn't got out yet. So who is the defendant? Because it surely is not Officer Little, and it definitely isn't Officer Neal. And let's talk about threats and trying to take someone's weapon. Use some common sense. If Jonathan was going to take anyone's weapon, don't you know who would take the person's weapon that was closest to him? Who would that be? That would be Officer Little. If he was going to cause any serious bodily harm to anyone, don't you know he would do that to the person that was closest to him? And that would be Officer Little. He had every opportunity to do that to Officer Little. That was what his intentions were not. And as Jonathan is running, the defendant sees him. Defendant fires 4 shots, a body of 4 shots in rapid succession at Jonathan, striking him multiple times. The defendant tells you that Jonathan was within 10 feet of him. He fired the first set of shots. Now, during the trial, the defense had a tape measure. And Detective Edwin Morales was sitting in that chair over there, and the defense counsel was here. That's about 10 feet. First shots fired. According to the defendant, Jonathan's over there. First shots fired at distance. Defendant, ladies and gentlemen, had enough time. Jonathan begins running till the first shots are fired to reholster his weapon. He had enough time to reholster that weapon and transition to his taser, his baton, his spray. Because he's a well-trained officer. He not only received training from DOET, but also from Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department's Academy. He also had SCATs, subject control arrest techniques, where he reholstered. He uses the elbows, hands, knees, tackle jump. He had a litany of options, non-deadly options at his disposal. And he didn't use, you know why? Because he panicked. He abandoned all of his training. He abandoned everything that he learned. And fired those shots. Now, during this 10 feet span, there is no evidence that Jonathan ever said anything to the defendant was going to take his weapon. He was going to grab his weapon. Nothing. 10 feet, ladies and gentlemen. 10 feet. There's no evidence of any of that coming from Jonathan. Ladies and gentlemen, if you recall, the defendant told you that his initial thoughts is that Officer Little tased Jonathan. He had 5 seconds to reholster his weapon and put handcuffs on Jonathan. 5 seconds to reholster his weapon and go put handcuffs on Jonathan. Now, does it make sense? If he had 5 seconds to rehold his weapon and go put handcuffs on Jonathan, he had enough time to transition to a non-deadly force situation. You heard Officer Kip White, who teaches the firearms training. You heard him say that the mere fact that someone's running at you and you don't know what they have in their hands is not a green light to shoot. He also said, if there's any doubt, no doubt, that means you don't shoot. After Jonathan been shot multiple times, falls to the ground. Getting back out, John falls on his lower extremities, his feet, his shin. And he's dying. He's bleeding. How do we know that? We heard Ms. Roxy tell you about the single source. And all that single source had about within his boots. All that, she says, blood, it's Jonathan's blood. Within his lower uniform, it's Jonathan's blood. On the weapon, nozzle, it's Jonathan's blood. And Jonathan had to be bleeding, injured and bleeding, before he transferred his blood onto the lieutenant's clothing. He was already shot, ladies and gentlemen. He was already dying when he hit that ground. He was still moving, but he could die. He didn't have long to live. He was clinging to life, grabbing what he could as he was dying. That explains, even though it's included DNA, that explains why his DNA and Finn's DNA on the left fingernail. As you expect, Finn's DNA being exposed. He touches it, he sweats, sheds. That's not right. You also have the fence paraded around some sketch. Like nothing but a line. Doesn't depict what happened on the ground. You know why it's a lie? Because the defendant says it's a lie. When he describes Jonathan on the ground, he says Jonathan's laying on his shin, feet area, movement, a belly crawl. I'm just trying to pull his feet from underneath. Belly crawl. Doesn't depict anything about that sketch. It's a lie. To corroborate that, Officer Neal, what does he tell you? Standing about 4 feet away, Jonathan is laying on the defendant's feet and shin area. He's swinging. No, he's not swinging. He's not doing anything but moving, falling, grabbing. And the defendant started shooting because he's moving. The fact of the matter is that when Jonathan lands on the defendant's feet, shins, he is dying. You heard Dr. Owens testify that out of the 10 shots that completed Jonathan's body, 3 of them were lethal, 2 were potentially lethal. Those 3, he only had a matter of seconds before he died. Seconds. But he could still move in those seconds before he expired, before he died. He took his last breath. And the defendant, still in panic, instead of shooting. Instead of shooting. Ladies and gentlemen, Bennett pulled the trigger 12 times, unleashing 12 rounds, 10 of which struck John. Vince wants to carbine silence. Then was a small guy. John was a large man. Weighed more than anything. That doesn't give you a right to shoot someone because of your size, because of their size. And that's not the law. And if that is the case, then every small police officer, when they encounter somebody, will be able to shoot them. That means every small officer will have the opportunity, if they encounter one of you, to shoot you. It's absurd. It makes no sense. It's ridiculous. We can't have that. Vince also talked about Bennett's family. Bennett's bad decisions on the morning of September 14, 2013 ended any possibility that Jonathan was ever going to be able to marry his college sweetheart, that she hired, that he was ever going to have children, be able to raise those children, see them grow up, that he's ever going to fulfill his hopes and dreams, that he's ever going to feel sunlight on his face. Because on the morning of September 14, 2013, with Bennett's bad decisions ended all those hopes and dreams of Jonathan Farrell as he lied face down in a ditch. He died with Jonathan. All his hopes and dreams and potential. Ladies and gentlemen, defendant on the morning of September 14, 2013, made a bad choice when he pulled that trigger 12 times, striking John 10 times. We're not here to say he's a bad person, but he made a bad choice. If you recall, in my opening, I asked each and every one of you, who polices the police when they do wrong? I asked you that over and over again, and I told you that you do. How do you have the courage to police the police when they do wrong? By finding the defendant guilty of using excessive force in the shooting and killing of Jonathan Farrell. Thank you.
Psalms 106, ladies and gentlemen, tells us that blessed are those who keep the peace. Blessed are those who do what West Kerrick did his entire career. In this day and time, why in the world would you want to be a police officer? these officers that work the courtroom here that testify, officers like Randall Kerrick, why would you want to be a cop? Great pay, great hours. Folks, they don't make enough. They have to work a second job to keep food on the table. Is it the great respect they have in the community now? No. Why would you want to be a cop right now? But that man sitting over there right now wanted it so bad he wanted to work his way up, and we're going to do that. You know, we're all fortunate in this courtroom. Judge Irvin gets to wear a robe. I get to wear a coat and tie. This table gets to dress up in business attire. Some of you get to wear a polo shirt, khakis, workout attire, sweater, whatever it is you do on your job every day. That's how we go to work. These guys right here, they have to they have to put on handcuffs. They have a baton to hit people. They have OC spray. They have a taser to shoot people. They have a firearm that can be capable of firing 15 rounds and 2 extra magazines. They have to have radios so that their communications know where they are. They have to wear a bulletproof vest to protect their vital organs. That's what these officers have to do every day, to go to work and put food on their table and do the oath that Mike Green read to you 2 weeks and a day ago about to protect and to serve. They are warriors, folks. A police officer is in a battle every day. He goes to roll call and goes to work. This case is not about several things, folks. It's not about race. And that statement Mr. Harris read to you about the great Dr. Martin Luther King was an attempt to play the race card. And there's no business for race in this case, period. Absolutely none. But they played the race card this morning. He told you in voir dire, and Mr. Green said it better than I, all you folks, is this case about race? It absolutely is not. And you ought to be offended the fact the state inserted the race card this morning. This case is not about an unarmed suspect not being harmless. You heard Mike Compagni and Dave Cloutier. Unarmed does not mean undangerous. The fact that no weapon was found doesn't matter. You can still be a danger to a person without having a weapon. Folks, this case is not a use of force case. The state in their voir dire wanted to make it out to you it's a use of force case. This is a response to resistance. The resistance that suspects, when they encounter police officers, require the police to respond. It's not a use of force. Response to resistance are suspect-driven. Mr. Harris, in his opening just a minute ago, said, and I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget it. He told you it was absolutely ridiculous that Jonathan wasn't a threat to Officer Little. Remember that? Why did their own experts say the deployment of the taser by Thornell Little was proper if he wasn't a threat? He said again, it was ridiculous, foolish, and nonsense, absurd to say that was a burglary. Why did Mike Compagni say, yeah, it was a burglary? Exactly what he said. That's exactly what was said, folks. He said it was a burglary. Absurd, foolish. I agree Mike Compagni was absurd and foolish in his testimony, and they just agreed with that. The case is not about kicking out a window. Remember he said just a minute ago that Jonathan kicked out the back window. What did Detective Gormican tell you? This guy who's investigated 200 plus accidents, he said that the physical evidence shows he didn't kick out the window because of the way the windshield fell, and because of the way the trees had hit the back of the car in the woods. So be careful what this table's telling you, because it doesn't make sense with what their experts have told you. They're expert in use of force, and they're expert in acts of reconstruction. Folks, this case is not a referendum on the police department. But you ought to be concerned about some training issues. Because the training issues with CMPD right now are all over the place. Some people say you use tasers. Some people say lethal. Some people say, no, you have to use some other method. The training is not what it should be in the city. You know, during Boyd Hour, Mr. Harris, besides asking any of you, do you ever see CSI, he said, this case is not about sympathy. Do you know for 1 minute why every time they mention the decedent, the suspect, Farrell, they all call him Jonathan? They're trying to pull your heartstrings, folks. In this case, it's not about sympathy. It's not about photographs. It's not about rolling out a shirt in a homemade contraption, flipping it over like you're at a let's unveil something. It's not about sympathy. What it is about, though, is failing to communicate. Let's think of what would happen if at Sarah McCartney's house, oh, Clem, ma'am, I'm hurt. I'm no threat to you. But what did she say he said to her? Turn off the alarm. Okay? If you're injured, wouldn't you want the alarm on because you know help's coming? CPI automatically would dispatch a patrol car. You don't get Luke Kuechly there like you do on TV, but you get the police there because they're coming. And you want them to be there if you're hurt. It's about failing to comply with law enforcement commands. Stop. Stop. Thornell Little told you. I told him to stop. If he stops, we're not here. It's about the failure to respond to the police presence that was out there on Reedy Creek Pool Road. Now let's talk for a minute about what else Mr. Harris told. He told you that the reason Jonathan went down Reedy Creek Pool Road was because Max Thunderbrook told him the cops hang out there. How many speeding tickets do you think they're going to write on Pool House Road? There's a sign here, remember, it says no trespass. The cops don't hang out here writing tickets. They hang out on Reedy Creek Road writing tickets. So when he told you that's why Jonathan went down Pool House Road, that's not correct. He went down that road because he was looking for some other place, some other victim possibly. This case is about split-second decisions, ladies and gentlemen. It's about split-second decisions that, number one, Mr. Farrell made. It's about split-second decisions Randall Kerrick made. Don't you know that he rues the day that he uttered 5 words? 5 words changed his family's life. Add me to the. They changed that man's life because he was trying to do what's right. He was trying to do what he was trained to do. Like his PRDs, his performance review developments. He helps people. He responds to his calls. Don't you know that if this man right here could have gone back, he would say, I'm going to call Dodge. I was doing his own check. I didn't have time to go to that call. But he responded because it was a priority one. Mike Green, my wonderful law partner and good friend, told you last week, 2 weeks ago, this case is about choices. Remember? He came up here in a big booming voice he has and said, it's about choices. And it was. It's about drinking. It's about smoking marijuana. And nothing wrong with those things. In the scheme of life, nothing wrong about that. When you get behind the wheel of an automobile, things change. When you get behind the wheel of an automobile, things change when that happens. Why do you use a cell phone? And you know what? The state didn't want you to know that. When Ed Morales got up there and testified, we showed him the picture. We showed him the picture of the cell phone. Right there. In the forward of the car. How about choices? Pick up your cell phone. Hit redial. You know Max had just sent him a text from after they got through smoking pot together. Sent him a text, good look on the ride. Hit the redial button. Max had been in a wreck, need a little help. And then, again, who put that evidence in? This table? Absolutely not. They didn't want you to know there was a cell phone there and that it worked. Detective Morales, was it working? Yes, sir, it was working because he checked it. Why did he use the cell phone? Why didn't he go back to Max Thunderbrook's house? Max Thunderbrook lived right down the road. Max Thunderberg lived right here. Wreck happened right here. Instead of walking all the way down Pool House Road, walk back to your friend's house. Max, been in a wreck. Just like Mike Green says, it's about choice. It's about choices, about attempting to break into residence. And folks, if you don't think there was an attempt to break into residence, look at that state's exhibit right here. You can feel the ridges in the door. Keep in mind, those marks were made in stocking feet. How hard would you have to hit this door to make an indention in it in stocking feet? Foolish, they call that. Nonsense. That's what Mr. Harris just told you it was. Foolish, nonsense, and absurd to think that was trying to break in the house. Really? Well, let's look at the door. There must be 5 places in this door that can kick, hit. Choices. Charging toward officers. Who does that? We have a duty as citizens to respond to the police. You may not like it, but you don't run directly at them. Grab Les Kerrick's firearm, striking him in the face. Choices. That's what this case is about. Running from the burglary charge and trying to physically intimidate the officers by running to them on Pool House Road. Again, Officer Kerrick made that choice, bless his heart, that changed his life. Add me to the call. He responded down Pool House Road. He responded down in this area because he heard the yelling, he heard the screaming. He had a duty to investigate that. He went by Sarah McCartney's house. You heard. Said he shined the flashlight there. Didn't see anything. The house was secure. Some of you mentioned in Boyd Hour about Perry Mason. Perry Mason was a fictional show years ago where he always won his cases. He always cross-examined a witness to the nth degree, and they came back, and somebody in the audience would say, wait a minute, I did it. And before Perry Mason came on, there was a theme. It said, this case is about. Any of you remember Watergate in 1973, just happenstance, Judge Irvin's grandfather presided over the Watergate hearings. And there was a question asked by a senator from Tennessee, and he said, it's about the Nixon breaking into the Watergate Hotel. What did the president know? And when did he know? What did Randall Kerrick know? And when did he know it when responding to the call? What did he know? Priority 1 B&E, home occupied, Officer Neal on the radio. It may sound silly, but did the homeowner know the suspect? No. Is the suspect still on the scene? Yes. Kicking on the door, and then he left the scene. No idea if he's armed or not. That's what he knew. What didn't Officer Kerrick know? He didn't know the name of the individual. He didn't know he'd been in an argument with his girlfriend, so much so that she was worried about his direction in life. That's what the testimony was. Didn't know about the alcohol use. Didn't know about the marijuana use. Didn't know. He didn't tell anybody. He didn't know if he was armed. Didn't know if he was injured. Ms. Postel asked a question: how do you treat mental health people? Did he have a mental health issue now from this table? He didn't know any of that. What's an elephant doing up here? Ladies and gentlemen, in India years ago, there was an old wives' tale that said there were 6 blind men. They wanted to find out if they knew what an elephant was. And so the elder said, let's go out and we'll all touch part of the elephant. First blind man goes and touches the trunk, and he says, it's not an elephant, it's a snake. It's round, it's slimy. That's not an elephant, it's a snake. The second blind man goes up and hits the elephant's tusk. He said, you're wrong, it's a spear. It's sharp, it's hard like a spear. It's not an elephant. Third blind man goes over and takes the elephant's ear and goes back and forth and says, it's a fan, it's not an elephant. Fourth blind man goes up and grabs the elephant's thigh and says, no, it's a tree because it's sturdy and it's stout. Fifth blind man goes up and says, no, you're wrong, it's a wall. I pushed the hide, it won't move, it's sturdy, it's a wall. And the sixth blind man goes up and grabs the tail and says, it's a rope. The wise man there said, gentlemen, you're all right. You all have to take part of what you saw to try to seek the truth. There's no one part of that scenario that's wrong. That's the same way this case is. All of you have to take part of this case, the parts, and try to put it together to find the truth. You're like the six blind men out there. You put pieces together to try to ascertain the truth. And that's what this case is about, to search for truth. Now, Judge Irvin's going to tell you the state has a burden. What did they not tell you about? Wouldn't you want to know about Thornell Little and about what he was thinking when he was the first officer on site at Reedy Creek Pool Road right here? They never called him as a witness. We called him. We wanted you to hear from him. Used to be an old radio broadcaster named Paul Harvey who would say, and now the rest of the story. Well, that's the rest of the story. They didn't want you to hear from Tactical SWAT Officer Will Parks. He's the officer who was the fourth one on the scene right here, who came in and took control of the situation. They didn't want you to hear from him. They darn sure didn't want you to hear from Eva Rossi, the DNA expert. What did Mike Green ask one of the first questions of his great direct examination of her? Mike Green looked at her and said, "Who do you usually testify for?" She said, "The state." Mike Green walked her through all that DNA evidence. Of course they didn't want that witness up here. Why didn't they play the radio traffic for you? Jennifer Stewart came in here. We wanted you to hear the radio traffic about what the officers were saying to each other. Why didn't they play Sarah McCartney's 911 call? They didn't want you to hear that either. They didn't want you to hear the CPI call for service. They sure didn't want Officer Neal's statement, Officer Little's statement in. They didn't offer them. We did. Kip White got up there and talked about the reactionary gap in the FADS video training. Did they call him? We did. And finally, what sums it up the most about how they wanted you to hear part of the story. A week ago Friday, Ed Morales was on the witness stand playing pitch and catch with Adrian Harris about questions. He would ask, well, didn't Officer Kerrick say it was Tuesday? And that Detective Morales would answer part of that question. We objected. Well, you can re-ask about it. Remember, we had a break in the afternoon about 3:30, and they came back and started playing the whole statement for you. They didn't want you to hear that. They wanted to play pitch and catch and just give you part of what Wes Kerrick told Detective Morales and Sergeant Lee and Ayler. You ought to be offended that they wanted to hide all those folks from you. Especially, it's not critical evidence. It is the heart of the case. The first officer there, second officer on the scene, the 911 call, what was in Sarah McCartney's mind? You heard from first witness Max Thunderberg, who says he smoked marijuana with Jonathan Farrell. We know it's marijuana because lab sheet said it was. We know he smoked marijuana because Eve Rossi yesterday in Mike Green's direct said, I examined the roach. State had, well, you don't know when he smoked that roach, do you? No, we don't. But Max Thunderberg said he just left his house after smoking the roach. You heard from Sarah. You heard the 911 call. You heard the terror in her voice. Remember when we walked over here that day, we asked him, like Bruce Lee, how did he kick in the door? And that's what she said. If he kicked in the door, he was banging on it for 5 minutes. A dog bark didn't even scare the person away. Turn off the alarm. Turn off the alarm. And you know what's really important about her testimony that nobody picked up on? Remember Sarah saying that he was pacing back in the yard doing this? Remember? Who else told you that? Thornell Little told you that when they got to Pool House Road, when they got right here to this area, and the suspect was approaching him, what did he say? He was pacing back and forth, doing the exact same thing Sarah McCartney said. I guess the state would have you to believe that Sarah and Thornell Little got together. She never heard the word help. And ladies and gentlemen, if it wasn't a break-in, why did the state of North Carolina, it's a pretty heavy door, why did they take this as evidence? If it's just a knock on the door, I need help. Why did these state investigators at CMPD see fit to remove that door as evidence in the case? Because they know it wasn't a knock on the door. They know it was an attempted break-in. just like Sarah McCarthy told you. That's what she used. That was what she was going to use, a baseball bat. That's how scared she was. You heard John Freeze, the firefighter, came up here and said there was a mark on Randall Kerrick's cheek. He'd been hit, according to his statement. Folks, here's where the case all comes together. This is like the six blind men coming together with the other. Remember in Rossi yesterday, where she said that Wes Kerrick's DNA was found under Jonathan Farrell's left hand. Left hand, right cheek. Left hand, right cheek. If I'm up here assaulting Wes Kerrick with my left hand, I'm going to hit him right here in his right cheek. He didn't ask me any questions about that. He wasn't cross-examined about that DNA under his fingernails. How did Wes Kerrick's DNA be under Jonathan Farrell's fingernails? Because he hit him in the mouth. He was bleeding. There was blood on Wes's uniform. That's how he got the DNA, because he was assaulting his left hand, right cheek. It's consistent with what John Freeze, the firefighter, told you. Kenny Phelps of EMT told you what an edema was. What's an edema? It's the body's reaction to a bruise. There was a bruise on Wes's left cheek. Right cheek, I'm sorry. The bruise on there is the body's reaction to that. It was consistent with being hit, according to what Kenny Phelps told you. Kurt Gorman. And again, Adrian Harris, in his opening statement, said, oh, he kicked the wind out. Detective Gorman, did he kick the wind out? No, sir. Why do you think that? Because of the angle and because of the way the tree trunks hit the back window. He said that that minimum speed was 41 miles per hour. There was no braking. It had to be caused by human error, either impairment or being inattentive. Road was flat, weather's clear, nothing wrong, no reason for the accident. And folks, Kurt Gorman also told you something else. There's the windshield right there. That's the windshield that was allegedly kicked out, but Officer Gorman said the tree caused that. He also told you, ladies and gentlemen, that that was not the closest house. Here's the closest house to this accident scene, not way up here. Here's the closest house. Here's the closest house to the accident. The investigation of this case can be summed up with investigator C.L. Price. When the officers get there, they send all hands on deck because of the serious nature of this. They had more crime scene officers out there than probably any investigation CMP's ever done. They take into their custody a Heineken bottle. Remember that? Because it was right near the car. And when you want to know if somebody's fingerprints are on it, what happens? They broke the bottle. They broke the bottle of one of the most important cases CMPD will ever investigate. They broke it. Instead of getting all these little pieces of charred glass, and getting these little marijuana bags, or whatever, wouldn't you want the beer bottle to be analyzed to see who, if anybody's fingerprints were there? But they broke it. It all goes, folks, to trying to put the puzzle together like the blind man in India looking at the elephant. Adam Neal. Adam Neal was the one whose video obviously was played. Remember what he said? He said those 5 words too. He probably wished he'd have never said. Add me to the call. Priority 1 call. The state kept asking him, why didn't you use your OC spray? And they were fighting in the ditch. Well, I was too far away. Why didn't you use your gun? He said, well, they were moving with each other. I couldn't fire my gun. Why didn't you fire your taser? I couldn't. They were moving around. He said things that are important, though. He said that Wes Kerrick, when he got there, was creating distance between the suspect. Remember that? He's backing up. People run at you faster than you can back up. That was the way he was trained. That was what Kip White said he did. He was creating distance. He said Farrell kept charging. He was amped up. He was pacing. He was trying to get at Officer Kerrick. Remember Mike Green asked him in his cross-examination? Remember it was Thursday afternoon. He's on his back right here showing you what happened, and that's exactly what happened right there. You're right. The state doesn't want that picture because that is consistent with the physical, scientific evidence. In this case, it's exactly what Adam Neal said was happened, that Officer Kerrick was using his left hand to try to shrimp backwards while Jonathan Farrell, the suspect, kept advancing on him. And folks, that's why his DNA is all over the place. And we'll talk about that in just a few minutes. Dash cam video. The dash cam video probably, ladies and gentlemen, creates more questions than answers. And the lack of evidence is evidence. The lack of evidence is evidence in this case. All the camera shows you is field of vision. The Christ walked there. Yep. Is there a video of it? According to the state, if there's no video, it didn't happen. Revolutionary War was 1775. Did that not happen? The state said there's no video. All it gives you is tunnel vision. You know, we played the slowed down version for you. We're going to play it again in just a minute. And the thing about the cameras you've got to be careful of is this. Video cameras are two-dimensional. They're height and width. We see things in three dimensions. Height, width, and depth. And the Super Bowl, the 50th Super Bowl is going to be played in February this year. If you ever watch a Super Bowl, if you're a football fan, how many cameras do they have covering the Super Bowl? 25 to 30. They can't get one play right because if it's wrong, they go to the replay booth and say, on further review, after 25 camera angles have come down. That's why this video doesn't help. And Mr. Harris said, well, without the video, you wouldn't be charged. Because the video raises absolutely more questions than answers. Absolutely more questions than answers. The video doesn't see what the officer shows. Let's play that video if we can. And if you can, when you look at that video, see if you can time in your mind how long it took for the suspect to come. Yes, he was in his patrol car right now. We now play it for you, ladies and gentlemen. We played it like this. They never played it this slow for you. This is half speed of what everybody saw. They're trying to break down to see if you can see the actions of the suspect there. And was he a danger, or was he just trying to, as the state says, seek out? Dr. Thomas Owens testified for the state a week ago Thursday, 2 weeks ago this Thursday. Folks, physicians are special. They protect the sanctity of human life. Dr. Owens is kind of a specialized physician. He's a forensic pathologist. He wants to use the body to see if I can tell what happened to somebody. The diagram he drew, ladies and gentlemen, he did not talk to Morales about what the facts were. He didn't talk to Thornell Riddle. He didn't talk to Adam Neal. He didn't talk to Wes Kerrick. He didn't look at any reports. He based his diagram on scientific, do not pass go, don't collect $2,000 type evidence, based on the angle of the shots. You look at the angle of the shots. Okay? All those angles is exactly what happened. And folks, we're going to go this in a minute. If you look where the gun is, you see a hand. That's the DNA right here. And Eve Ross talked about it. Stacy, we don't know when that was put on there. Oh, yes, we do. Because remember, Eve Rossi said, I processed this door right here. Farrell's blood was on the door before he was ever shot. So he's grabbing the gun before he's shot. Now, Mr. Harris, whoever cross-examined Dr. Kerrick witness, said, well, that's just one scenario, isn't it? Dr. Owens, candid as he was, said, yes, that's true. But why didn't this table look at him and says, well, Dr. Owens, do you have a scenario for us? Why didn't their own medical examiner give them a different scenario? Because there's not one. He's a professional. He's a forensic pathologist. You heard his training, you heard his background. And all the shots add up. And this is a physician who never spoke to anybody about the case. He said, here's what the physical evidence shows. And you're right to state, we're going to beat that picture for more today than we ever have, because that's exactly what happened. That's like a snapshot of what happened in the ditch of Pool House Road that night. You know, you heard 2 weeks ago Friday from and this is a real special name, but not a whole lot of substance to it, the Office of the North Carolina Chief Medical Examiner. We don't test for marijuana anymore. Oh, come on now. Really? Okay, you don't. Why didn't they send the blood of the suspect here to an outside agency? Wouldn't you want to know that? And they told you about the error rate in their calculations based on Mike Green's great cross-examination. It's 7.5%. You know, on April 15th, we all did our taxes. When you picked up your taxes from your accountant, if he told you, well, there's a 7.5% error rate in it, would you mail them to the IRS? You absolutely would not. Mike Green also walked her through. They said, well, tell me about extrapolation evidence. What does that mean? He says, well, we can try to go back in time and estimate the blood alcohol content of somebody who's been in a wreck or whatever to see what their BAC would have been at the time of the driving. What was her answer? 0.084. The legal limit is 0.08. Roughly 4 beers. Detective Ed Morales, when he asked Wes Kerrick for an interview, second page, quote, I want you to understand you are not in any trouble. Really? He's there on trial basically for his life, and he's not in any trouble. That's what he was told by the officers. And when he sat down and talked with these officers, he'd been through the most traumatic event of his life. No sleep since the shift. He could have said, I want to come back tomorrow and talk to you. He could have come back, Wes Kerrick could have come back and said, I don't want to even speak to you. I'll talk to you. I'll go out to the scene and do a walkthrough with you. Why didn't they play his walkthrough with you? This man went out on the scene with the investigators and walked through the crime scene. Why didn't they play him? Goes on to the list we talked about. They don't want to hear from Thornell Riddle. They don't want you to have the 911 call. Why didn't you do the walkthrough with Wes Kerrick? They didn't want you to have that either. We showed the pictures. We showed the pictures that were taken by Officer Kerrick. He broke them down. Remember, we went through probably 25 of these, and you have a right to look at these if you want to. That's what it broke down. You saw it when we put them up there. We wanted you to see that because there were no lights in his eyes. It supports him charging at these three officers. And Wes Kerrick's statement that he gave to Ed Morales was exactly consistent with the photograph that Dr. Thomas Owens drew. No burden. We showed you the cell phone. We showed you in that picture, ladies and gentlemen, where the shoes were. You saw the shoes. Don't you think it's kind of ironic that Farrell was not wearing his shoes when this happened? Doesn't that add to the more bizarre circumstances of his behavior? Why would you leave a friend's house after being out drinking and smoking pot and not have any shoes on? Did he kick the door with his shoes before the accident? How else do you explain somebody's bare feet? You can feel the dent, just like you can feel the dents all over this. Did it happen with his shoes on? Did the wreck happen after the alleged breaking? Better call Mike. The city's in trouble. Call Mike Compagnia. Better call Mike because he's our professional witness. He's testified in 5 cases for the city. Wouldn't you want to know what those results are? Better call Mike. He works for CMPD. What else do you think he's going to say about Wes Kerrick violating policy? He's command staff. The chief, 5 deputy chiefs, probably 10 majors, captain, and lieutenant. That's command staff, CMPD. Why in the world do you think they called him up here? Because they had to have somebody to say he violated policy. Why not? And keep in mind, folks, this is not these 3 folks over here prosecuting Wes Kerrick. It's the state of North Carolina with a blank check of resources and CMPD with a blank check. They've proven that to write a check. Why in the world wouldn't they go out and hire an outside consultant and say, come in, let's look at Wes Kerrick's training records, let's look at Wes Kerrick's actions, did he violate policy? Let's bring in somebody that doesn't have an allegiance to one side or the other. Okay, where is he? Maybe, just maybe they couldn't find anybody. Anyway, we can't say, well, you work with CMPD, you're independent. We need somebody that's not a line that's not a paper and say, yeah, I looked at those policies and that officer right there violated. But it's weird what he testified to. He said that Thornell and Wes Kerrick's response to the scene was prompt. It's okay not to run blue lights and sirens. He said that was okay. He said that Officer Little, in spite of the fact that about 35 minutes ago Mr. Harris said it was foolish and nonsensical and absurd to think he committed a first-degree burglary, that it was a first-degree burglary. He said it was proper for Randall Wesley Kerrick to draw his firearm. But here's where it differs. This officer says he should have reholstered his firearm and fought with it. Put up your dukes and let's fight. Does that make sense, folks? Four seconds. Does that make sense for this officer to reholster his firearm and go hands-on with somebody who has blown through a taser, who is obviously the suspect in a crime of violence, a breaking and entering felony charge, burglary, occupied by somebody, who has failed to heed commands, who's failed to stop? Does it make sense for an officer to reholster his firearm and say, hey buddy, let's fight? It doesn't make sense. And folks, when it doesn't make sense, that adds up to reasonable doubt. If your boss asks you to do something, folks, you're going to do it. And that's why you better call Mike when something like this happens. We talked about, and he told you about this use of force continuum. And it's a guide. It's nothing more than a guide, ladies and gentlemen. It's not something that officers have to follow step by step. And in that use of force continuum, it talks about what the standard is. It says use of force continuum is guidelines. The test for reasonableness is not capable of precise definition or mechanical applications. Proper applications requires careful attention to the facts and circumstances of each case, whether the suspect poses an immediate threat on the officer or others, or was he attempted to resist or evade arrest by flight. In addition, an officer should take into account his or her ability. That's what this man was operating under. And you don't have to go, as he told you, as Dave Cloutier told you, it's not a step-by-step progression. At that point, the state rested. And you know what we could have done? Mike Green and I could have sat here and stood up, and Mike was doing voice could have said, Your Honor, we rest. We don't want to call any witnesses. We want to rest right now and not put up a single witness. And if we did that, Judge Irwin would have told you probably that there's no burden on a defendant to put on any evidence in a criminal case. But we wanted you to hear. We wanted you to hear about that man. We wanted you to hear about his scars and his positives. So the first witness we called was a psychiatrist. Excuse me. David McCord told you that he passed the test for being a police officer with flying colors. He was serious, conservative, he obeys rules. He takes action to meet problems. Add me to the call. He has no stress issues. Performance reviews, his report card. You know, we all get rated by our jobs. Lawyers get rated by their clients. Judges get rated when the election comes around. We all get rated. His rated was he's a solid officer, he helps others. Again, add me to the call. That's the type of person he was. He responded to his calls. That's what his supervisors told you. He's not an A-plus officer, but he's a B to B-plus officer. And you know what happens when we bring up this evidence? The state of North Carolina, because they have the burden of proof, has the right to bring in what's called rebuttal testimony. Sergeant Smith, did you supervise Wes Kerrick? I did. What kind of officer was he? He wasn't worth anything. Did you hear that testimony? Did you hear any supervisors or fellow officers come in when they worked with Wes Kerrick in the Hickory Grove Division and said, hey, he's a pain to work with. He doesn't answer his calls. He's late for work. His uniform's messy. He's just not good for the locker room, if you will. Nobody said that because there's no evidence of it, because it doesn't happen. You heard from Officer Charles Thompson, who works with Wes Kerrick in Hickory Grove Division then. Charles Thompson came in and told you that he and Officer Kerrick were in an incident in 2012, a misdemeanor. Big difference in a felony. And they both drew their tasers. Remember that? He said, no, we were counseled. When you get counseled as a police officer, it's like one of two things happen. It's like if you're in school and you go to the principal's office, or your supervisor calls you in and says, we got a problem. And they were taken to the principal's office and they were told, taser, lethal. You've got to have taser because the person having the taser, if it doesn't work, you're in an aggravated active aggression situation. And you heard Lieutenant Eric Brady come in. Command staff. Command staff officers at CMPD usually wear the white shirts. Command staff is the chief, deputy chiefs, majors, captains, and lieutenants. The command staff person of CMPD verified everything Charles Thompson said. Yes, I counseled. We didn't remember it at first. He says, I remember talking with them and told them, taser, lethal. Kip White came up and said, we called him, they didn't. We wanted to know about what reactionary gap was. And Dave Cloutier explained that, and Kip White explained that too. And let's look at how long it takes somebody to advance on an officer in 3 seconds.
This person
Sir? 30 seconds. 3 feet. 30 seconds to go 3 feet. And Agent Harris is wrong about one thing. When we asked Ed Morales to hold the tape right here a couple of weeks ago, he told you it's within 10 feet. 3 to 5 feet is clearly within 10 feet. 3 seconds, 21 feet. And here's what an officer has to do when they're trying to get this reactionary gap. Orient themselves to what happened, assess the situation, and react. All in 3 seconds. He said 2 officers, 1 taser, 1 lethal. Tyler Black. Tyler Black came up here and told you, an engineer, the accident happened. He told you how it happened. 38 miles an hour to 50 miles an hour. So now we have a range when that accident happened. It was a minimum 38, a maximum 50 miles an hour. He also told you the wreck happened because of what? Human error. What do we know that to be from Kirk Bormkin? Inattentiveness or impairment. John Serdan. John Serdan is a drug recognition expert who is probably the finest DRE Charlotte has to offer. He got up here and told you, based on our questions, tell us about the effects of alcohol and marijuana. Here's what he told you. It's hard to read. He told you, ladies and gentlemen, that cannabis causes people to be disoriented, impaired perception of distance and time, paranoia, relaxed inhibitions that's in your system for 2 to 3 hours. And we know he smoked with Jonathan Farrell. We know that Max Funderburk smoked with Jonathan Farrell because he told you it was about 1:30 or whatever. When the accident happened, still in his system. That coupled with the alcohol, that's a dangerous combination to get behind the wheel of the car, and to have an encounter with police officers. No wonder, with all that in his system, he didn't know that there were 3 officers there in their Class B uniforms. Remember Mike Green 2 weeks ago showed you the picture of the patrol cars on all sides. It's got police on the front. It's got Charlotte police on the back. You've got Charlotte police on their arms. How in the world could you not know those are 3 Charlotte police officers? And keep in mind, what did Wes Kerrick know, and when did he know it? That's his case. What did he know? When did he know it? He doesn't have to know that this person is impaired. He doesn't know that this person is blown through a taser. That's what he saw. He doesn't know why. And he has a right to a reasonable reaction to that, and that's exactly what he did. That's exactly what he did. The impairment caused, remember Mike Green told you, choices. This case is about choices. The failure to do what you're supposed to do. He also told you, ladies and gentlemen, that at a .05, your judgment's impaired. And at .08, you have impaired vision. Maybe that's why he blew through the taser. Maybe that's why he didn't respond to commands from Little and Kerrick. Maybe that's why. It goes to show you exactly why this man took the actions that he did. So we got the .08. The other thing we asked John Serdan was, tell us about the NVR problems in the Hickory Grove Division. And he told you, remember, that the NVRs, they download in whatever division you're in, the Providence South, Metro, Central, wherever division you are, you pull in the parking lot, it automatically downloads. NVR problems. There's a problem. Remember what Will Parks told you his NVR was full because he couldn't get it downloaded. So Wes Kerrick didn't want to waste his NVR space. Jennifer Stewart, the 911 call. Folks, we go back to what we said about 45 minutes ago. This is evidence the state didn't want you to. We played the 911 call for you. Listen, let's go back and remember Sarah McCarthy's voice in the 911 call.
Hello? Where are you at? Was the guy breaking in your front door? Did he ever in your front door? Yeah, he came and took it down. Okay. Did he see it person? Yeah, he was walking in the door. He just woke up on the street. Okay, alright, what's your name? Sarah. Okay, Sarah. You sure you're black now? Yeah. Okay. Oh my God. All right, good night, later.
Remember, ladies and gentlemen, we asked her that day when she testified, how about beating on the witness stand to tell us how hard the person was trying to beat on the door, not the computer system offline here. She hit the door sill. That's how terrified this woman was with the child. Radio traffic. No burden of proof on us. Judge Irvin will tell you that. The state has the burden. Why in the world do they not want you to hear what the officers were telling each other in response to this call? I don't know. Maybe you can ask them when they come up here. Why didn't you want us to hear this? We wanted you to hear Officer Kerrick's response. We wanted you to hear Officer Little's response. We wanted you to hear Officer Neal's response. We offered this for you. They didn't want you to hear that. Event chronology, what's that? This is what the officers knew at the time they responded to the call. Who offered that? Did they offer it? No. We wanted you to hear it. And the event chronology, Article 61, says, suspect involved, complainant is Sarah, said a black male yelling to turn off the alarm, trying to kick the door in, just occurred. He, quote, he kicked through the door after she realized it wasn't her husband. Her child is also in the house. B&E just occurred. Now, did he really kick through the door? He didn't kick through the door all the way in. But folks, it goes back to what we talked about in the Watergate. Did the president know? When did he know it? What did he know? He's responding to a call for service that on his computer, what they call a CAD screen, CAD screen, said somebody just kicked through a door. That's the heightened awareness that Little, Neal, and Kerrick had, because that's what they knew when they responded to the call for service. What did they know? When did they know? Brian McCartney came in one afternoon. He's the one that worked as a nurse at the hospital in Concord. He came in and told you probably the best version about this story than anybody. Mr. McCartney, do you remember about this story? He said, yeah. He said, the night before I went to work, the night before this happened, I was getting ready to paint that door, and I thought, well, I have to have it level or whatever. He said, no, there were no dents in it. It was dirty. No dents in it. Remember, we put it up here, and Mike Green and I about killed Chrissy here. We're putting the door up here. But we walked up and looked at it. You can see the dents in the door, clear as a bell. You can feel the dents in the door. Those weren't there when Ryan McCartney went to work. The eyes don't lie. And that's what he told me. That shows you the force that the suspect was using to try to get in Sarah McCartney's house to do who knows what. Thornell Little. Again, we called him. They did. 13 years with CMPD and never had to deploy his taser. And again, Adrian Harris this morning, an hour ago, says he was no threat to Thornell Little. Okay, if he's not, why wasn't Thornell Little disciplined? Why wasn't Thornell Little, something happened to him? Why did Captain Compagni come up here when you better call Mike and bring him up here and say Thornell Little's actions were appropriate? Because that's what he said. He said that he saw the exact same thing Sarah McCartney saw in her front driveway. He's pacing back and forth, slapping his thighs. The state says, it's not on the video, it didn't happen. Remember Mike Green's very poignant question when that happened? Did Officer Kerrick shoot Jonathan Farrell? Yes, it's not on the video, that means it didn't happen? No. Again, the camera gives you tunnel vision. But you heard Officer Little testify. Here's what he said. He said he's responding to a call. He didn't know if anybody else was coming. He concerned him because he wanted backup. When he arrived, he observed Kerrick outside his patrol car. Kerrick told Little someone was yelling and screaming. He pointed to the road and where a pool house where the community pool was. Little made a right turn onto the road, Kerrick following him. Little saw the suspect to the left. Little described the suspect as a black male, gray shirt, blue jeans. Saw the suspect pacing back and forth and walking in circles. That's the statement. By doing this, he was slapping his hands on the thigh area, exactly what Sarah McCartney saw. As Little stepped from the vehicle, he was yelling and screaming. He stopped and walked toward Little. He told him to stop. The suspect was 10 to 15 feet away. Now, the state says, well, it's not on the video. It didn't happen. How about the fact where Thornell Little told you, he said, shoot me, shoot me. Yeah, in my agreement, I probably had 25 notebooks in here. The little paper would probably kill a forest of trees in here. And I wish to heavens that Thornell Little, Adam Neal, and Wes Kerrick all came in here and said, yeah, I heard shoot me too. I heard that too. That would be incredible because people perceive events at different times. Just because it's not on the video, ladies and gentlemen, the jury does not mean it didn't happen. Little goes on to say, the suspect kept advancing to me. He heard him say, shoot me, shoot me. He then grabbed his taser and pointed the taser. He fired just before the suspect started running. He described him running at that group of officers as a charge and a bull rush. That's not a walking up saying, hey, I'm in a wreck, whatever. Taser had no effect on him. He believed it was a good shoot. I kept waiting on him to drop, but he kept running. He's running full speed. Remember the Kip White video? And Jonathan Farrell looked like he was in a heck of a lot better shape than that suspect running 30 feet in 3 seconds. He remembers the suspect charging toward Kerrick, not walking fast, charging, Kerrick retreating. Little recalls Kerrick giving the suspect loud commands. Ran toward Kerrick. Looked like he was trying to knock him over. He ran directly toward Kerrick, and that's when Kerrick fired the shots. He said he moved using less than lethal. Kerrick was his cover with lethal. He said originally he didn't think it was a deadly force situation. That's why he had his taser. When the taser didn't work, it progressed to the next round. Thank you, Judge Irwin. He said when the taser didn't work, the situation...
Court, Circle stands in recess till 11:15.
If you leave the courtroom, please take your belongings with you.
You're going to remain inside the courtroom, we ask you to stay seated.